Hi everyone, I'm Katie Pfohl. I am the Curator of Modern and Contemporary Art here at the NOMA of Art. And I'm here today to talk about these two works that we have hung at the museum side by side. One by the famous abstract expressionist painter Jackson Pollock, and the other by the artist Lee Krasner. And these two works are hung side by side for a number of reasons. One of them, and perhaps most pertinently, that Jackson Pollock and Lee Krasner were married throughout their lifetimes and share a really interesting sense of artistic infinity, but also divergence. As many of you probably know, Jackson Pollock is arguably one of the most famous painters of the 20th century, known for these oftentimes quite violent and dramatic drip and pour paintings, where he would pour paint, house paint, industrial house paint straight onto canvas on the floor of his studio, oftentimes with like sleeve rolled up, holding a cigarette, known for these kind of like hugely expressive but also quite masculine works that many argue captured the turmoil of the time period that he was painting. A time of war and protest and violence, using painting as a tool not only to respond to the sort of chaos and violence of the time, but also, and I think quite powerfully, to think about the effect that that has on kind of deeper psychology. So the way that painting can, to a certain extent, not just represent what we see, but also capture the kind of inner emotions and feelings that are evoked by our experience. So this is one of the first of the series of famous paintings that Pollock would make using this drip and pour technique that he pioneered. And this is arguably the most valuable work in NOMA's entire collection. This is quite remarkable for being arguably the first, or one of a small group of works where Pollock first began to experiment with his drip and pour technique. This is actually a work on paper that, if you look closely, you can see still has the tack marks from where Pollock pinned this to the wall of his first gallery show at Betty Parsons Gallery, because at the period, during the time period, he was just starting out as a painter and didn't have the money to frame his artworks. So it's quite remarkable that one of the most valued and valuable artists of the 20th century, right, began in this quite humble way with these small work on paper that shows this quite remarkable energy and power. And it's so interesting giving tours of this because so often people will kind of look at this and be like, oh, this is something that my kid could do. And I can tell you right now, go home and have your kid try and do this or try and do it yourself, and you won't be able to arrive at quite this like incredible sense of motion and energy. Now, one of the things that's really interesting about Pollock and his work is that he began painting at roughly the same time as his wife, Lee Krasner, but Lee Krasner is only now getting recognized for the strength of her own work, despite the fact that many scholars and writers argue that in many ways she pioneered a lot of the techniques that Pollock then became famous for. So Lee is quite a remarkable artist and was one of the only female artists who were part of the school of abstract painters in the 1950s, and really worked in this very fundamental way to influence and inspire Pollock, but because she was a woman, never received the same due during her lifetime. So it's only just now that we're beginning to see and unearth a really kind of complicated and very personal and often quite messy relationship that emerged between them. And these two works together are one of my favorite juxtapositions in the whole museum, because I think you see both the similarities between these artists and also the difference between them. So this work by Lee Krasner that you see here is called Breath, and she made this in 1959, almost 20 years after Pollock made this early drip painting. And at the same time that you see both artists experimenting with this quite incredible and really energetic abstraction, I think you can also see the ways that Lee's work was so different to a certain extent. The work, as I said, is called Breath, and she uses colors and tones that feel like they have this intimate connection to the body and to the self. So, if someone like Jackson Pollock is making these dashing, often quite violent feeling, intense, loaded, emotional marks, Lee Krasner's are much more contemplative, connected to the body, connected to the rise and fall of breath. I feel like you look at this work, you can almost feel yourself breathing. You feel this resonance to a certain sense of the body, a certain sense of a kind of feminine understanding of the world and the body's place within it, and a very different idea about what painting's goal was. One of the things that I think is so interesting is that during Krasner's lifetime, this work was not hugely well respected. There was a famous show in the 1950s that was called Man and Wife that put exactly these kinds of pairings up. So you'd have Pollock, the man, and Krasner, the woman, right next to each other. And basically, in many respects, is interpreted as a kind of like showing the ways that women were, according to one review of the time, like tidying up their husband's style. That women were more demure and less evocative and less powerful in their painting than men. And I think as time has worn on, many people have come to appreciate the exact opposite. The way that a work by someone like Krasner like this is really modeling this new way of thinking about how painting can relate to the body, can relate to contemplation itself, and I think offer what at the time was quite a new way of thinking about painting in its way of asserting sexuality and gender and all of those issues or concerns. One of the other things that I find really interesting about this pairing is that Krasner painted this work in 1959, shortly after Pollock himself, who was quite a troubled man and an alcoholic, had killed himself, had died. And I think, in that period, right, Krasner, I think really in fundamental and really interesting ways came into her own, began thinking in new ways about painting and how it could move past the kind of frenzy of the moment that Pollock was working this time after the war, and arrived at a new way of thinking about what painting's role was in responding to violence and tragedy and loss, which was to offer this kind of, I think, quite powerful and forceful way of thinking about how painting can be a form of meditation and contemplation. Every time I sit in front of this, I become very conscious of even my own body breathing in and out, and I think that was really a big part of Krasner's goal in making these works. So I love having these together for all kinds of reasons, but one of them, and I think it's important, is that Krasner's work is much larger than Jackson Pollock's, and I think it really matters, as a museum of the 21st century, to say, look at these powerful works by these women artists who've been overlooked for much of the 20th century, and the way that they, in many ways, stand up to or even overpower that of the men who once really dominated the conversation. So, thanks everyone for being here today. I'm really happy to be able to share these. Have a wonderful day.